Welcome, 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 everybody. It is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, or whatever time it happens to be where you are, because you are watching us right now. It is time for our video series, Outwitting the Devil, where we take a look at this book, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And we have a gentleman who is our guide, our mentor, our professor here, who is going to take us on this journey. And we've been going on this journey for now several weeks, chapter by chapter. And this gentleman has studied at the University of Wyoming, Northwest College, and Stanford University. He works at Making a Difference, teaching people how to create an entrepreneurial lifestyle of fun, profit, freedom, and impact. His mission is to help you create an authentic life of freedom of your choosing and on your terms. So without further ado, our series of Outwitting the Devil, the book by Napoleon Hill. Let's get started with our professor for this series. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dana Scranton.
Well, thank you, Craig, Robert, and Terry as well. Welcome to another day in paradise and another time together with the devil, and of course, Mr. Earthbound. So, we're going to kind of get cranking here. This chapter today is actually a very important one. They all are, but this is very important because it integrates several of the prior chapters. And you'll see how in just a moment. What I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull up the slides right now and get us cranking. So there we go. So you should be able to see the slide.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so we are on chapter 7 of the book, or chapter 11 of the audio tracks. And today's principle for doing away with the devil's dastardly methods of hypnotic rhythm, which is kind of the weapon that he's been focusing on here. We're going to go into something very important for a number of reasons. I want to just throw out a few of the quotes that are relevant to it. Every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Now, this is a quote from the book that has been repeated over and over again. So this right here is a core principle of how to defeat the devil in this dastardly way that he uses of hypnotic rhythm. And so this is the core. If you believe this, then this lays the foundation for everything that follows. Another quote from the book: failure is a man-made circumstance. It's never real until it's been accepted by man as permanent. Now, this is an exceptionally powerful quote, because what this says is it's all in your mind. When it comes down to failure or adversity, the lesson, the opportunities, the actual experience comes down to what you believe it to be. So that's very important. Yep. All right, there we go. Here's another one. Success usually is but one short step beyond the point where one quits fighting. Now, there's another book in the Napoleon Hill series. It's written by Sharon Lechter and another author, and it's called 3 Feet from Gold. Basically, the concept is when you come up against adversity, when you come up against an obstacle, the worst thing you can do is quit. You know, if heaven forbid it should beat you, that's fine, but don't go down without taking it with you, because the very next swing may be where the success comes. Adversity offers an opportunity to reset for success. And this goes along with that first statement that every adversity is the seed of an opportunity. Failure can break the grip of hypnotic rhythm through an overwhelming level of emotional crisis, thereby forcing one to abandon destructive habits and instead create and adopt new, more constructive rhythms. So this goes back to the prior lessons that we've had, where hypnotic rhythm can be both positive or negative. How you adopt it, how you practice it is where the key is. If you allow bad habits to fester, to take over, to become hypnotic rhythms, then you're doomed on that trajectory. However, you can defeat it. And unfortunately, one of the ways that often ends up being the way that it happens is you get thrown into extremely stressful times in life. And coming out of that is where you decide enough is enough. You change your habits, you change your life. Regardless of why we encounter the misfortunes in life, it's how we respond to it that's the most important factor in deterring or determining the result. Another misspelling. Failure is never final until it is viewed as such. So it's how you handle the circumstances. Failure causes most people to drift because it diminishes morale, self-confidence, enthusiasm, imagination, and definiteness of purpose. Now, this goes all the way back to the very key foundations that Napoleon Hill laid out. Definiteness of purpose is the very start of these 7 principles of how to inoculate yourself against the devil's tactics. So definiteness of purpose leads you into realizing that hypnotic rhythm must be controlled, it must be owned by you. And then we move forward into today's topic. And so it integrates all of these together. Here's another one. Natural law, ever focused on maintaining and restoring harmony, guarantees that compounded negative thought habits and actions will result in adversity. So what does that say? Your thoughts produce your life. Negative thoughts, negative life. And the opposite is true. Positive thoughts, positive actions, positive life. So this again has to do with what's in your mind and how you handle your response to adversity. So here's a different understanding of adversity that I want to just share with you real quickly. This is something I came up with just today. And it's when we think about adversity, we oftentimes think about really stressful, impactful moments in our life. But adversity doesn't always show up as a steamroller trying to knock us over. It can show up as a micro event in our life. And so it can be a hammer, it can be fog, confusion, lack of focus. It can be a hook, something that distracts you, that draws you to it, like doom scrolling. It can be just something that drips on you and eventually erodes you away, something, a repetitive thing that happens to you that you don't do anything about. It could be the crowd, the environment, and we're going to be getting into that in the next chapter. And then the trap, the deceptive comfort, the idea that everything's going fine because I feel good about it, but actually it's a trap. All of this is adversity. These are just the personalities of adversity. And so the trick here is to be vigilant and observant. Learn to identify and spot the signs of adversity, even if they're subtle. No steamroller action here. A gentle breeze that doesn't smell quite right, to put a little olfactory emphasis on it, that's something to be aware of. To look for the subtleties that turn into the steamroller. Okay. And what are the personalities? Well, here's some of the personalities of adversity. You've got the little things like I just talked about, the irritation, the anxiety, the doubt, those little things that you just kind of blow off and don't think about until they start accumulating and lead all the way up to the catastrophic, devil in your pocket steamroller rolling over you. So in between the -1 and all the way up to the 10, that's a range of adversity. Every single moment that you encounter some form of adversity is an opportunity to change and turn it and flip it to an advantage. So these are what I call resonance bands, and these were 2 different ideas I was throwing together. When you look at it and you ask yourself, well, what does it feel like? Well, what is it? Well, you can see here, and I'm not going to go over these. These will be in the slides if you want to go back and look at the video. But there's different things that happen in the overall spectrum of adversity. The hammer, the fog, the hook that I've already talked about. What does it really turn into? Well, let's take fog, for example. That fog is one of those things where you're not really sure that you've got control of your thoughts. You don't really know what you want. You don't really have that definiteness of a purpose. And, you're kind of wishy-washy and maybe I'll just sit down and doom scroll for a while and then I'll get up motivated. Well, what is the energy that's resonating with you at that moment? Well, blurry, distracted thoughts, confusion, delay, procrastination. How about just all out disorientation? You got so much going on in your life, none of it in control. You're in the fog. That's adversity. So the radar. So this is kind of a summary of what I just went through. And again, you can come back and look at these on the video. Just stop the frame and there it'll be. But the macro, the meso, and the micro. Okay, so be aware that adversity shows up in various levels, various stages, and various forms. Don't just look for the hammer on the head. It can start with a very simple attitude, a reaction to something that you then repeat every day, that then creates the next level, the meso, where now you have conflict in your life. That goes to the macro, where you're annoyed, you're confused, nothing's working. So with that said, we're going to move on and we'll come back to these slides after we get going. So I hope that was beneficial as an intro to what we're going to be hearing today.
Awesome. See here.
Chapter 11. Learning from Adversity. Is failure ever a benefit to man?
Yes. Indeed, learning from adversity is the third of the 7 principles. But few people know that every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Still fewer people know the difference between temporary defeat and failure. If this knowledge were generally known, I would be deprived of one of my strongest weapons of control over human beings.
But I understood you to say that failure is one of your greatest allies. I got the impression from your confession that failure causes people to lose ambition and quit trying, and then you take them over without opposition on their part.
That is just the point. I take them over after they quit trying. If they knew the difference between temporary defeat and failure, they would not quit when they meet with opposition from life. If they knew that every form of defeat and all failures bring with them the seed of unborn opportunity, they would keep on fighting and win. Success usually is but one short step beyond the point where one quits fighting.
Is that all one might learn from adversity, defeat, and failure?
No, that is the least of what one might learn. I hate to tell you this, but failure often serves as a blessing in disguise because it breaks the grip of hypnotic rhythm and frees the mind for a fresh start.
Now we are getting somewhere. So, you have confessed at long last that even nature's law of hypnotic rhythm can be, and often is, annulled by nature herself. Is that correct?
No, that is not stating the matter accurately. Nature never reverses any of her natural laws. Nature does not take away a human being's freedom of thought through hypnotic rhythm. The individual gives up his freedom by abuse of this law. If a man jumped from a tree and was killed by the sudden impact of his body with the earth through the law of gravity, you wouldn't say nature murdered him, would you? You would say the man neglected to relate himself properly to the law of gravity.
I'm beginning to see. The law of hypnotic rhythm is capable of both negative and positive application. It may drag one down to slavery through loss of the privilege of freedom of thought, or it may help one rise to great heights of achievement through the free use of thought, depending on how the individual relates himself to the law. Is that correct?
Now you have it right.
But what about failure? One does not fail intentionally with purpose aforethought. No one encourages temporary defeat. These are circumstances over which the individual often has no control whatsoever. How, then, can it be said that nature does not take away one's freedom of thought when failure destroys ambition, willpower, and the self-confidence essential to make a fresh start?
Failure is a man-made circumstance. It is never real until it has been accepted by man as permanent. Stating it another way, Failure is a state of mind. Therefore, it is something an individual can control until he neglects to exercise this privilege. Nature does not force people to fail, but nature does impose her law of hypnotic rhythm upon all minds, and through this law gives permanency to the thoughts which dominate those minds. In other words, failure thoughts are taken over by the law of hypnotic rhythm and made permanent if the individual accepts any circumstances as being permanent failure. That same law just as readily takes over and makes permanent thoughts of success.
Failure is a state of mind. Therefore, it is something an individual can control until he neglects to exercise this privilege. Can this be true? Has Hill convinced you that failure is a man-made circumstance? I believe he makes a compelling case. If I look closely at my life, my own successes and failures in business, mistakes and missteps, can I claim that anyone is responsible other than myself? Will a personal inventory of your life yield different results? Hill has helped me place a different value on failure than I did in the past.
What part, then, does failure play in helping an individual break the grip of hypnotic rhythm after that law has been fastened upon his mind?
Failure brings a climax in which one has the privilege of clearing his mind of fear and making a new start in another direction. Failure proves conclusively that something is wrong with one's aims or the plans by which the object of these aims is sought. Failure is the dead end of the habit path one has been following, and when it is reached, it forces one to leave that path and take up another, thereby creating a new rhythm. But failure does more than this. It gives an individual an opportunity to test himself, wherein he may learn how much willpower he possesses. Failure also forces people to learn many truths they would never discover without it. Failure often leads an individual to an understanding of the power of self-discipline, without which no one could turn back after having once been the victim of hypnotic rhythm. Study the lives of all people who achieve outstanding success in any calling, and observe with profit that their success is usually in exact ratio to their experiences of defeat before succeeding.
Is this all you have to say of the advantages of failure?
No, I have barely begun. If you want the real significance of adversity, failure, defeat, and all other experiences which break up a human being's habits and force him to form new habits, watch nature at her work. Nature uses illness to break the physical rhythm of the body when the cells and organs become improperly related. She uses economic depressions to break the rhythm of mass thought when great numbers of people become improperly related, through business, social, and political activities. And she uses failure to break the rhythm of negative thought when an individual becomes improperly related to himself in his own mind. Observe carefully, and you will see that everywhere in nature there is always at work a natural law which gives eternal change to all matter, all energy, and to the power of thought. The only permanent thing in the universe is change, eternal, inexorable change, through which every atom of matter and every unit of energy has the opportunity to properly relate itself to all other units of matter and energy. And every human being has the opportunity and the privilege of properly relating himself to all other human beings, no matter how many mistakes he makes, or how many times or in what ways he may be defeated. When mass failure overtakes a nation, such as the 1929 World Business Depression, the circumstance is in perfect harmony with nature's plan to break up man's habits and give out fresh opportunities.
The beauty of publishing this book now, during the current economic turmoil, is that nature is once again breaking up man's habits and presenting fresh opportunities.
What you are saying intrigues me. Am I to understand that hypnotic rhythm has something to do with the way people relate themselves to one another?
That abstract, elusive thing called character is nothing but a manifestation of the law of hypnotic rhythm. Therefore, when speaking of one's character, it would be proper to say his thought habits have been crystallized into a positive or a negative personality. Through hypnotic rhythm, one is good or bad because of the knitting together of his thoughts and deeds through hypnotic rhythm. One is bound by poverty or blessed with abundance because his aims, plans, and desires, or lack of them, have been made permanent and real by hypnotic rhythm.
Is that all you have to say of the connection between hypnotic rhythm and human relationships?
No, I have just begun. Remember, while I am talking, I am speaking of the influence of hypnotic rhythm in connection with all human relationships. Men who succeed in business do so entirely because of the way they relate themselves to their associates and to others outside of the business. Professional men who succeed do so largely because of the manner in which they relate themselves to their clients. It is much more important for the lawyer to know people and to know the laws of nature than it is to know the law. And the doctor is a failure before he starts unless he knows how to relate himself to his patients so as to establish their faith in him. Marriage succeeds or fails entirely because of the manner in which the participants relate themselves to one another. Proper relationship in marriage begins with a proper motive for the marriage. Most marriages do not bring happiness because the contracting parties neither understand, nor attempt to understand, the law of hypnotic rhythm, through the operation of which every word they speak, every act in which they engage, and every motive by which they are inspired to deal with each other is picked up and woven into a web that entangles them in controversial misery, or gives to them the wings of freedom through which they soar above all forms of unhappiness. Every newly made acquaintanceship between people ripens into friendship and then into spiritual harmony, sometimes called love, or plants a germ of suspicion and doubt which evolves and grows into open rebellion, according to the way in which the participants in the acquaintanceship relate themselves to one another. Hypnotic rhythm picks up the dominating motives, aims, purposes, and feelings of the contacting minds, and weaves these into some degree of faith or fear, love or hatred. After the pattern has taken definite shape, as it does with time, it is forced upon the contacting minds and made a part thereof. In this silent way does nature make permanent the dominating factors of every human relationship. In every human relationship, the evil motives and the evil deeds of the contacting individuals are coordinated and consolidated into definite form and subtly woven into that all-important human trait known as character. In the same manner, the motives and the deeds of good are consolidated and forced upon the individual. You see, therefore, it is not only one's deeds, but also one's very thoughts which determine the nature of all human relationships.
You are leading into pretty deep water. Let's keep it near the shore, where I can follow you without fear of getting beyond a safe depth. Go ahead and tell me how this subject of human relationships actually works in the current affairs of a problem-filled world such as we have today.
That is a happy thought. But let me make sure you understand the principles I am telling about, before I try to show you how to apply them in the affairs of life. I wish to be sure you understand that the law of hypnotic rhythm is something that no one can control, influence, or evade. But everyone can relate himself to this law so as to benefit by its inexorable operation. Harmonious relationship with the law consists entirely of the individual changing his habits so they represent the circumstances and the things the individual wants and is willing to accept. No one can change the law of hypnotic rhythm any more than one can change the law of gravity, but everyone can change himself. Remember, therefore, in all the discussion of this subject that all human relationships are made and maintained by the habits of the individuals related.
No one can change the law of hypnotic rhythm any more than one can change the law of gravity, but everyone can change himself. Have you ever tried to change someone else and only been frustrated when you realized that you were not in control and therefore not succeeding?
The law of hypnotic rhythm plays only the part of solidifying the factors which constitute human relationships, but it does not create those factors. Before we go further with the discussion of human relationships, I want you to get a clear understanding of the subconscious mind. The term subconscious mind represents a hypothetical physical organ which has no actual existence. The mind of man consists of universal energy, some call it infinite intelligence, which the individual receives, appropriates, and organizes in definite thought forms through the network of intricate physical apparatus known as a brain. These thought forms are replicas of various stimuli which reach the brain through the 5 commonly known physical senses, and the 6th sense, which is not so well known. When any form of stimuli reaches the brain and takes the definite shape of thought, it is classified and stored away in a group of the brain cells known as the memory group. All thoughts of a similar nature are stored together, so that the bringing forth of one leads to easy contact with all its associates. The system is very similar to the modern office filing cabinet, and it is operated in a similar manner. The thought impressions with which one mixes the greatest amount of emotion or feeling are the dominating factors of the brain because they are always near the surface, at the top of the filing system, so to speak, where they spring into action voluntarily the moment an individual neglects to exercise self-discipline. These emotion-laden thoughts are so powerful, they often cause an individual to rush into action and indulge in deeds which have not been submitted to or approved by his reasoning faculty. These emotional outbursts usually destroy harmony in all human relationships. The brain often brings together combinations of emotional feelings so powerful they completely set aside the control of the reasoning faculty. On all such occasions, human relationships are apt to be lacking in harmony. Through the operation of the sixth sense, the brain of a human being may contact the filing cabinet of other brains and inspect at will whatever thought impressions are on file there. The condition under which one person may contact and inspect the filing cabinet of another person's brain is generally known as harmony. But you may better understand what is meant if I say brains attuned to the same rate of thought vibrations can easily and quickly exercise the privilege of entering and inspecting each other's filing cabinets of thoughts. In addition to receiving organized thoughts from the filing cabinets of other brains through the sixth sense, one can, through this same physical organ, contact and receive information from the universal storehouse known as infinite intelligence. All information reaching one's brain through the sixth sense comes from sources not easily isolated or traced. Therefore, this sort of information is generally believed to come from one's subconscious mind. The sixth sense is the organ of the brain through which one receives all information, all knowledge, all thought impressions which do not come through one or more of the 5 physical senses. Now that you understand how the mind operates, you will more easily understand how and why people come to grief through improper human relationships. You will also understand how human relationship may be made to yield riches in their highest form, riches in material, mental, and spiritual estates. Moreover, you will understand there can never be happiness except through understanding and application of the right principles of human relationships. You will understand, too, that no individual is an entity unto himself, that completeness of mind can be attained only by harmony of purpose and deed between 2 or more minds. You will understand why every human being should, of his own choice, become his brother's keeper in fact, as well as in theory.
What you say may be true, but I still insist that you have me beyond safe depths of thought. Let us get back nearer to the shore, where I can wade in familiar water. We shall go out into the deeper water after we learn to swim well. We started out to discuss the subject of how to profit by adversity, but it seems we have drifted somewhat afield from that subject.
We have detoured, but we have not drifted. The devil never drifts. The detour was necessary in order that you might be prepared to understand the most important part of this entire interview. We are now ready to get back to the discussion of the subject of adversity. Inasmuch as most adversities grow out of improper relationships between people, it seems important to understand how people may become properly related. Naturally, the question arises as to what is a proper relationship between people. The answer is that the proper relationship is one that brings to all connected with it, or affected by it, some form of benefit.
The proper relationship is one that brings to all connected with it or affected by it some form of benefit. Take a moment to inventory your relationships at home, at work, and at play. List the relationships that seem in need of improvement and keep them in your mind as you continue listening.
What then is an improper relationship?
Any relationship between people which damages anyone or brings any form of misery or unhappiness to any of the individuals.
How can improper relationships be corrected?
By change of mind of the person causing the improper relationship, or by changing the persons to the relationship. Some minds harmonize naturally, while others just as naturally clash. Successful human relationships, to endure as such, must be formed of minds that naturally harmonize, quite aside from the question of having common interests as a means of bringing them into harmony. When you speak of business leaders who succeed because they know how to pick men, you might more correctly say they succeed because they know how to associate minds which harmonize naturally. Knowing how to pick people successfully for any definite purpose in life is based upon ability to recognize the types of people whose minds naturally harmonize.
Remember Hill's definition of the mastermind: harmonious coordination of two or more minds working to a definite end.
Stay focused on adversity, if you will. If there are possible benefits to be found through adversity, name some of them.
Adversity relieves people of vanity and egotism. It discourages selfishness by proving that no one can succeed without the cooperation of others. Adversity forces an individual to test his mental, physical, and spiritual strength. It thus brings him face to face with his weaknesses and gives him the opportunity to bridge them. Adversity forces one to seek ways and means to definite ends by meditation and introspective thought. This often leads to the discovery and use of the sixth sense, through which one may communicate with infinite intelligence. Adversity forces one to recognize the need for intelligence not available except from sources outside of one's own mind. Adversity breaks old habits of thought and gives one an opportunity to form new habits. Therefore, it may serve to break the hold of hypnotic rhythm and change its operation from negative to positive ends.
What is the greatest benefit one may receive through adversity?
The greatest benefit of adversity is that it may, and generally does, force one to change one's thought habits, thus breaking and redirecting the force of hypnotic rhythm.
In other words, failure always is a blessing when it forces one to acquire knowledge or to build habits that lead to the achievement of one's major purpose in life. Is that correct?
Yes, and something more. Failure is a blessing when it forces one to depend less upon material forces and more upon spiritual forces. Many human beings discover their other selves, the forces which operate through the power of thought, only after some catastrophe deprives them of the full and free use of their physical bodies. When a man can no longer use his hands and his feet, he usually begins to use his brain. Thus he puts himself in the way of discovering the power of his own mind.
The devil brings in the other self here, revealing how we can use our power of thought and our other selves to discover our true power and major purpose.
What benefits may be derived from the loss of material things, money, for example?
The loss of material things may teach many needed lessons, none greater, however, than the truth that man has control over nothing and has no assurance of the permanent use of anything except his own power of thought.
I wonder if this is not the greatest benefit available through adversity.
No. The greatest potential benefit of any circumstance, which causes one to make a fresh start, is that it provides an opportunity to break the grip of hypnotic rhythm and set up a new set of thought habits. New habits offer the only way out for people who fail. Most people who escape from the negative to the positive operation of the law of hypnotic rhythm do so only because of some form of adversity which forces them to change their thought habits.
Isn't adversity apt to break one's self-reliance and cause one to give up hope?
It has that effect on those whose willpower is weak through long-established habits of drifting. It has the opposite effect on those who have not been weakened through drifting. The non-drifter meets with temporary defeat and failure, but his reaction to all forms of adversity is positive. He fights instead of giving up, and usually wins. Life gives no one immunity against adversity, but life gives to everyone the power of positive thought, which is sufficient to master all circumstances of adversity and convert them into benefits. The individual is left with the privilege of using or neglecting to use his prerogative right to think his way through all adversities. Every individual is forced either to use his thought power for the attainment of definite positive ends, or by neglect or design, use this power for the attainment of negative ends. There can be no compromise, no refusal to use the mind. The law of hypnotic rhythm forces every individual to give some degree of use, either negative or positive, to his mind, but it does not influence the individual as to which use he will make of his mind.
The non-drifter meets with temporary defeat and failure, but his reaction to all forms of adversity is positive. He fights instead of giving up and usually wins. Do you remember a time when you felt like giving up but didn't? My co-author and I expand this concept in our book 3 Feet from Gold with stories of perseverance and never giving up from over 35 of today's top leaders, non-drifters of our time.
Am I to understand from what you say that every adversity is a blessing?
No, I did not say that. I said there is the seed of an equivalent advantage in every adversity. I did not say there was the full-blown flower of advantage, just the seed. Usually the seed consists of some form of knowledge, some idea or plan, or some opportunity which would not have been available except through the change of thought habits forced by the adversity.
Are those all the benefits available to human beings through failure?
No. Failure is used by nature as a common language in which she chastises people when they neglect to adapt themselves to her laws. For example, the World War was man-made and destructive. Nature planted in the circumstances of the war the seed of an equivalent reprimand in the form of a world depression. The depression was inevitable and inescapable. It followed the war as naturally as day follows night, and by the operation of the selfsame law, the law of hypnotic rhythm.
Am I to understand that the law of hypnotic rhythm is the same as that which Ralph Waldo Emerson called the law of compensation?
The law of hypnotic rhythm is the law of compensation. It is the power with which nature balances negative and positive forces throughout the universes, in all forms of energy, in all forms of matter, and in all human relationships.
Does the law of hypnotic rhythm operate quickly in all instances? For example, does this law immediately bless one with the benefits of positive application of thoughts, or curse one immediately with the results of negative thoughts?
The law operates definitely, but not always swiftly. Both the benefits and the penalties incurred through the law by individuals may be harvested by others, either before or after their death. Observe how this law works by forcing upon one generation of people the effects of both the sins and the virtues of preceding generations. In the operation of all of nature's laws, the fourth dimension, time, is an inexorable factor. The length of time consumed by nature in the relation of effects to their causes depends in every instance on the circumstances at hand. Nature grows a pumpkin in 3 months. A good-sized oak tree requires 100 years. She converts a hen's egg into a chicken in 4 weeks, but she requires 9 months to convert the egg of a human being into an individual.
Life gives no one immunity against adversity, but life gives to everyone the power of positive thought, which is sufficient to master all circumstances of adversity and convert them into benefits. Has nature created the current economic turmoil to allow us once again to convert our own personal adversities into benefits?
Well, that was a powerful and beneficial chapter. And you see what I mean by how it was integrating multiple concepts from the prior, all the prior sessions.
Yeah.
It's like it's the biggie. And the next one he referred to is going to be environmental effects, and then it goes to time. Those are 2 more things that he mentioned in this. So, yeah, it's a very powerful chapter, and it's just I think it's one of those things that everybody struggles with and don't realize what's going on. The diversity or adversity rather is just, it is so subtle in some respects and just so overpowering in others. And it's all the same thing. It's all the same energy. It's the same source. It's the way you deal with the circumstances around you, right? The things you can control and the things you can't. So, okay. What I want to do is just real quickly share the remainder of the slides, and then we'll get into the discussion. The 10 benefits of adversity. Now, he referred to some of these. The adversity forces us to discover our weaknesses and to compensate for them. So that's one. It makes you aware of where you've got a weakness. It gives you a chance to test yourself. In other words, to build the confidence to know that you can come back against the situations that took you down. It forces you to learn the truths. In other words, you don't know what you don't know until you know what you don't know, if that makes sense. So you learn many truths that you would not otherwise have experienced. And this is kind of like those 4 steps of I can't remember exactly what they are, but the 4 different stages of competence. This is possibly one of the ways you get there. It helps you appreciate the power of your self-discipline to take control of your life and your thoughts in particular. And when you do that, then you start pulling away from the negative hypnotic rhythms. It enables you to discern the fault in your aims or your plans, and you can then reconstruct your plan going forward. Now, that's one of those subtle things. You have a plan, you're going forward, it isn't quite working, but if you sit back and say, okay, what adverse forces are pushing me off course, even though they be subtle? That adversity cures us of vanity and egotism. So how many people have you known that they're walking around with their chest puffed out, driving a very, very nice car and living large and dressing to the tens, nines, and dozens. And then they show up one day driving an old beater because all of that failed on them. And now they're not nearly as vain and egotistic as they were. Now they're willing to listen, to learn, and to succeed once and for all. Then there's these. Adversity inhibits selfishness. When you're down and out and you need the cooperation of others, all of a sudden selfishness doesn't play into it. Adversity pushes us towards meditation and introspection. He mentioned that. In other words, deeper into thought and to legitimate consideration, authentic consideration for what has brought you to this point in life. And finally, the last two, the challenge is to recognize that you are not alone, that you have sources, powers, guides that will help you if you just open up and ask. And finally, it breaks old thought habits. And then again, as I showed you those images at the very beginning, you don't need to wait for the reckoning to appear on your doorstep. You can break your habits by being aware, being familiar with what you do every day, and asking those questions about whether or not that's leading you in the right direction or not. And when you start to become aware, you then become more aware of hypnotic rhythms, and then you have a chance to fix them. So, a final quote: there's a great power to be discovered in your other self. Search sincerely, and you will find it. And that was from several lessons ago. So I just wanted to leave you with those before we got into the discussion, and any questions, answers, ideas, thoughts, epiphanies. Anybody have an epiphany?
And as we like to share here for everybody, if you want to participate, you can go ahead and put your thoughts in the chat for here, or you can go ahead and put your cursor in the middle of the screen where you see these faces. On the bottom, there's a button that says raise hand. Click on that button, and we'll call on you in the order in which we receive you. And Dana, I got to say, this was an incredible topic, and it just each chapter just seems to open up a new door within. Yes, I agree with what Robert. It's a new step till we finally reach the end of how to outwit the devil. It's just mind-boggling, and I can see where, given the time in which it was written to where it is today, it could have been. It was very scandalous indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite relevant even today.
Yeah.
That's part of the scary part too,
Yeah.
is that if you think about with everything that's going on in society today, and even though this book was written back in the 20s and 30s of the 1900s, it's like, wait a minute. Life is definitely there is a circle to this life that we have, and it has come around again, and it's showing its head to us.
Yes, it has.
All right, let's go ahead and start with Coach Bob Johnson. Coach, go ahead, open up, and please share with us.
Oh, shoot. Oh, hi. Sorry. I was clicking buttons. Great chapter, Dana. I want to mention. I want to talk about relationships. They mentioned that was one of the most important things. Kind of, we're in it for the benefits of it. Consciously, you don't think about that when you're like a friend to somebody. You know what I mean? You think about how you can help them out, right? Subconsciously, probably you're in it for the benefit, of that they bring to you somehow. So I was hoping you could elaborate on that a little bit more.
Well, I think there's truth to that. Your subconscious is really kind of the storehouse of a lot of different things, including your desires, your fears. And so it's driving you from, down deep. It's where a lot of people's personalities reside, their identities. You probably met people who they do things that just seem like, how could they possibly think or do that? Or how could they possibly not do that? And to them, it's normal. Well, that's a subconscious, perhaps. You're running on a control system that is beneath your day-to-day visibility. It's running silent. It's running based on decades and decades of life that it's compiled information on. So the actions you take on a given day, unless you are very deliberate and aware, really are those thoughts that are running in the background. It's the hypnotic rhythm that is programmed into you. And so what we talked about today is being keenly aware of the very subtle influences that happen throughout the day that are adversities. Now, one place in there, I think the devil referred to the fact that it just, the subconscious mind is a layering mechanism. It's just accumulating and filing things away. There's a lot of truth to that. So when you deal with people in relationships, you've got to be coming at it from the point of view that you are aware of the reciprocity. You're not giving to get. What you're doing is you're giving to grow, to open up the possibilities for having taken that channel, and in so doing, to suppress the negative hypnotic rhythms that are selfish, that are running down below. So you could almost, this is a little abstract. You can almost look at an action like that as facing adversity. The adversity you're facing is the reaction of your subconscious mind and the feelings that keep coming up to try to drag you back. That's one of those subtle ones. But if you have your definite purpose and you've defined what it is that purpose means to others, because as we said early on, you have to serve somebody to get what you want. You just can't go out in the world and start saying, I'm happy, I'm successful, I've got all these riches. What, from the trees, the bugs? This all comes from being a human and having relationships, whether it's with one or with many. And the best way to do that, I think Robert has lectured on this time and time again. You'll get what you want when you give enough people what they want. That's Bob Proctor. I forget exactly where that came from, but that's kind of the essence here. You've got these forces down below that are programmed based on a life of experiences, some of which have been negative. When you become aware of that, you take the first step to suppressing them, pushing them down, filing them away in the to be shredded file cabinet. And then you move forward in a positive way. And so once you do that, you start building. And I think it's exponential. I don't think this is a linear phenomenon. Once you start reacting in a way that suppresses those negative thoughts and the rhythms that have led us up to this point, then every action thereafter made with awareness is a contributor towards flipping the script. I don't know if that made any sense. That answered your question.
Yeah. Because, I was taking it to the thought that I go into a relationship for the benefit of myself. But maybe something is like, if I do something good for something, I feel better about myself, so I am getting a benefit, right? So yes, that made a lot of sense what you had said. Thank you.
Benefit is far greater than money. The benefit is the ability to replicate that more readily and to a greater degree of success. It's like mastery, right? The mastery of helping others. It starts by holding a door open for someone, and then it goes beyond that to where it's not only the door, but you picked up their heavy bag, or whatever you want to do. But you can extrapolate that to when you assist others, you help others, you contribute. That basically gives you the capability to do it at larger magnitudes. And so ultimately, the adversity you face in this particular case is getting past yourself. That inhibit that somehow makes you think, well, I'm doing this selfishly for myself. Well, don't do that. Look for the outcome of the other person. What are they getting? And then you get rewarded in kind.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And by the
Good
way,
s-
oh, sorry.
No, good stuff, Bob. That's all. That was great
Oh,
stuff.
okay. No, I was going to say that quote that Dana, you were referring to is from Zig Ziglar.
Zig, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you can have everything in life you want if you help enough people get what they want.
Yeah.
And of course, Craig being the person he is, he put the 4 stages of learning in there in the chat. So
Yeah.
Yep.
good stuff, Craig. Anybody else?
Thank you. Yes. Anybody else? Robert, I'm
Terry?
sure you have something to share as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, if no one else has anything, I just wanted to make sure to allow other people to say some stuff as well. This chapter for me, um, again, they just keep compounding. It's like it feels like what Albert Einstein said, compounding interest. It just seems like Napoleon Hill's really good, and a lot of these people, Og Mandino, they write books and they compound. It just seems like it just keeps taking it to another level. And when I look at my life, and I think a lot of people could do this, when I look at my life, the only reason that I am where I am today is because of adversity. I seen a presentation one time. I think it was Joe Rogan was interviewing Mel Gibson on a podcast, and he was just saying that they were talking a little bit of why he decided to do the Passion of the Christ, and it's pretty timely what we're coming up to now, with Easter coming up, and he just constantly said that he just knew that anything that made anyone great or some kind of movement, um, just in awe, the word awesome was adversity first. And he said, it's just that a group of people mostly don't get that resistance to anything. Any kind of adversity is not someone trying to test you or push you down. It's just that, the whole concept of harvest and planting. It's like everyone wants an incredible harvest. Just no one wants to take the time to prepare the land. No one wants to take the time to get rid of all the trees. That's where Dana's mark is, if you guys want to know. It's like you got to remove the trees, you got to pick all the rocks, you got to do all the tilling, you got to put in, the fertilizer. You got to do so much to prepare the ground, and then you got to put all this effort into seeding and making sure that it's properly watered. And people just don't understand when you look at farming or ranching just how much adversity there is before you get a payoff. And so I've met so many people in my life um, that when they get hit with adversity, especially in relationships, that's where they quit and they just basically will do this carpet bombing. It's like, I had a bad relationship, so every man on the planet sucks. And the same with males, you know what I mean? It's like I shared Terry this funny deal, and it was showing the difference between men and women. And the woman has a bad relationship, and it's like this is not a blanket, but it is. But a woman has a bad relationship, and she just like sets back for a little bit, you know. And then it showed the guy, and he was like a penguin, and he just was walking out in on a glacier all by himself, you know. So you always find these guys that go through a bad divorce and they're living with two other guys in a small apartment, or they're living in a studio or in somebody's garage, and they just like keep minimalizing their self down. Now that's not all people, right? But when I look at my life and the things that have happened to me, I now look at them as it's just part of life that adversity is going to get you. But when adversity happens, it allows you to, be still and say, okay, so where's my next move? Because, when I got hurt as an auto mechanic and had a doctor that I believed in, why I gave him that much authority. But when he said I couldn't be a mechanic anymore, I look at my life today and he was absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Did I did I have to go through a lot of rehab to get back to where I could have been a mechanic? Yeah, that probably would have took like 9 months to a year of rehab before I would be okay walking on my late knee and also putting pressure on it. But since he told me I couldn't be a mechanic, and now my identity's gone, and I no longer can be a mechanic, that allowed me to go, well, what else can I do? It's like a surrender. And I can even remember the emotional times during that where it got a little worse, where all of a sudden I had to go in for something to deal with workman's comp. And I basically had the person tell me that if I didn't go out and do job interviews, that they were going to take workman's comp away from me. That I had to prove to them that I was looking, physically looking for another skill to do. I don't know if they do that anymore, but just like so I look at the things that have happened to me in adversity in my life, and I'm just like, I am one of those people that when adversity happens to me, I'm not perfect. I do turn into a whiner and a complainer and oh woe is me. And I thought the hee haw song popped in my head, doom, despair, and agony on me. like, and I think that people should be allowed to feel that. But then it's like, now what am I going to do? I always think of the thing with Jim Rowan. It's very prevalent in all this teaching that, the day that he lied to a Girl Scout because he didn't have any money was the day that he said, I'm not living another day like this. So it's whatever breaks that camel's back for you. And it is funny that today, again, on Daily Wisdom, I was talking about 3 feet from gold, wasn't I, Craig? For the people that are on there, that it is pretty amazing that there's just these certain things that make I've run into a lot of people over the years that there's like this concept of building an organization or having a group of people that become very loyal customers to a brand that they just don't think that is possible. And so of course it doesn't show up for them. But me, I'm looking at the other part of the world, where, all of a sudden ChatGPT can come out and have 100 million users in 2 months. That's like, so all the records that have ever been records of how many subscribers radio got, and then it seemed like when TV came out, it cut it to a tenth. And then all of a sudden, how many people have cell phones? That cut it to a tenth. It's always this new technology that comes out that gets to 100 million subscribers faster than anything. Well, Matt just shared with me that this conversion now from ChatGPT to OpenClaw, that they were able to get 100 million subscribers in 24 hours. All they needed to do was create something better than ChatGPT. And in a blink of an eye, you have all these companies that said they were going to give multi-billion-dollar contracts to ChatGPT. And they find out about, Opus or whatever this is, Claude. And they're like, okay, you're not there anymore. I mean, ChatGPT hasn't been out there very long. So for them to go to 100 million subscribers, drop to 50 million paid subscribers, and now they got 100 million left them. It's like, you just, so that would be adversity. And I wrote something else down here too. Things are changing so fast that, I seen a small interview with Elon Musk, and he said that there's no such thing as experience, and there's no such thing as education, and there's no such thing as a resume anymore. He said the three key components that someone would send to you to make sure that you gave them a chance to work for their company. He says, we now have an HR email, and what you need to submit to them is a problem that you solved and how you solved it. And he goes, no problem is too small. He goes, because based on the problem that you solved is where you would fit in my company if you ever work for any of my companies. So very simply, send us an email of a problem that you solved and how you solved it. Is that crazy? I don't want to see your resume. I don't need to know how old you are. I don't give a rip about your education or your experience. I want problem solvers. And I'm going, wow, that's a niche mindset to go after. Wouldn't you agree, Dana?
Oh yeah.
It's like, listen, if each and every day you're not up excited about solving a problem, it's like, why would you want to be a part of our group?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's all I have. So in this chapter, how you can look at some of the most awful things that have happened in your life and now look at them with gratitude of being a blessing to basically just force you to consider an alternative. Well, just like I would have just I mean, I said it perfectly. The adversity forces you to have to be different than the hypnotic rhythm that you are in. Every time I talk to people and they go, well, I just can't do this. I just can't do this. And I just walk them through an imaginary problem. And I go, so, like we see this all the time. A person pulls into a parking lot. A lot of their coworkers are still in the parking lot. They walk up to the doors of a Toys R Us. And there's a sign on the door saying, we're out of business. There's a chain on the door. And there's three groups of people. There's the people that all get together and whine and complain, pull out some protest signs, tried to put together a class action lawsuit. Another group that gets butthurt and goes home and looks at this little time off as a vacation. It's like, I wasn't really serious about this job anyway. I don't care. And then I always say, I'm looking for the people that screeched out of the parking lot and they're all racing each other to the unemployment office. It's like, there's some people that go, hey, I guess this job is over, but I'll have another one, in a couple of days or so. And they do. It's always the people that say, I'll get a job, no problem. But they find a job. And they find a job because they understand the concepts of working at the bottom and working your way up. They understand that to go the extra mile. And they probably learned these lessons from other jobs. It is like, the person that shows up and says, hey, I'm an apprentice. I can't afford to pay you. I don't want you to pay me. You know what I mean? And then goes in there and puts a couple of good days work in with a great attitude, going the extra mile. And it's like, yeah, you're hired. I don't, and believe it or not, I will say one extra thing. All the training that I've gone through with Alex Hermosi this is the new way of being in the world. And Alex Hermosi was just saying, people keep asking him how he makes so much money. And he goes, I try to give away everything I possibly can. So when he was working for gyms, instead of trying to sell a software, that could help them get more gym memberships that they wouldn't use because they had the way that they have always done it. He would just show up in areas and do everything that he knew how to do. And then he would follow up and find out that they were getting an average of 10 new customers a month. Well, he would work a month and then call up the owner and he said, I noticed that you averagely get 10 members extra a month. Did you figure out how you got 40 last month? And they were going, no, it's obvious that we got, 3 times more memberships, but we can't tie it to anything. Now you can. That was me. Would you like me to continue? And I'm going like, see, no one wants to do that anymore. And for those of that are watching, we just went to like, to think that we started, I think Terry and I were talking like on the 23rd. On the 24th is really when we launched AI Upline. And what Matt did different than anybody is he took all of Josh's ideas that he had in his head, and he took 2 weeks to create it, and then sent it to Josh. And Josh was like, who created this? And Matt's me. Well, can you change this and this? Yeah, refresh your screen. And Josh is like, we got to get in a contract. I could sell tens of thousands of these memberships. And it all came from Josh's idea, and he was sharing it with his other programmers, and they were talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it happen, and months and months and months, if not years of work. And Matt took all his knowledge and did it in a couple of weeks. So you can get to an entrepreneur that's got money when you can show them what you created for them. So now Josh got all these ideas that he's giving Matt. Matt creates them within a week, and Josh is on an airplane out selling it. And so, yeah, it was that was the thoughts that I gave Matt. I said, listen, what's gonna, the worst thing can happen is you take 20, 30 hours of work and put it into something, and they don't want it. You do nothing but learn about it anyway. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. But I brought that story up. I was going, why did I bring that story up? The reason I brought that story up is for the Hollis family, for Josh to sell MDC and HempWorks to Immunitech with a lot of adversity for the Hollis family. A lot of stress, loss in income. What are we going to do? What roads are we going to take? And I know for a fact that if we didn't have to have some family conversations of what we needed to do to move forward, then Matt would have never been in a place of adversity to say, oh, this is not happening in my family. And it really forces your back against the wall, because a lot of us just want to stay in the hypnotic rhythm and not change anything. So thank you, Dana.
You're welcome, and thank you, Robert. That was pretty danged insightful.
Well, you're my professor. I come on, I'm one of your students. Why would that's like.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else? Greg, back to you.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised. So I think we can conclude today's chapter about adversity. And shout outs to Coach Bob Johnson, of course, Terry Robert Hollis, and our professor, Dana Scranton. Thank you so much for guiding us in this chapter by chapter, week by week of Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And of course, we'll be back next week, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, for our next chapter. You don't want to miss that. And of course, we have a lot of things that happen every day here on Unlimited Wisdom. Go to the calendar in our Unlimited Wisdom community and you'll see something every single day. Please join us. We love to see you. We love to have you. And we are very, very grateful that you are here with us and being part of this amazing community. So until next time.
And happy Passover and happy Easter week to you guys.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all very much. Until next time, please be good to yourselves, be cash, and bye-bye. I'm going to go ahead and unmute so we can all say so long and have a wonderful Wednesday.